All right, so let's go ahead and get started. How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody doing okay? Nervous? What in the world? Well, hopefully we can ease scared for the teas. Well, just remember, deep breath in, deep breath out. Well, I am so excited that it is halfway through the week. So, I still work on weekends, but just something about knowing I've made it halfway through each week is just a relief. So, again, we just breathe in and we breathe out, and we just take it one step at a time, and we just know that we're growing, we're learning each step of the way. So, all right, well, we're going to go ahead. Hopefully, we can ease some of your nerves, help you feel a little bit better. We're going to go ahead and get started. So, tonight, if this is your first time joining in, it is a great time to join in because we are starting back over with our review cycle. So, this is part one of three for the reading portion. This is going to cover key ideas and details, that first section. Now, a little bit for those of you who are new, because I do see quite a few names, but for those of you who are new, let me just remove this. Now, for those of you who are new, just a little bit of information to help you. Hi there. Um, Help you kind of understand some of the resources that we have available for you. We have a ton of great resources. So obviously you're joining in on the webinar tonight, so you found out how to sign up. But if you're interested in future webinars that we've got coming up, we have a QR code. We have a QR code for everything. But here is a QR code for you to help you find the upcoming ones. Like I said, this is part one, so part two and three are to come. So if you can join in, we would love to have you back. And this shows you all the ones for all subjects as well. Now, we do have January and February schedule up there, so you can go ahead and kind of see what's coming up for all subjects. If you would like to go back and rewatch any webinars, that's the big question that I get. Can I go back and rewatch this webinar? You certainly can. And this is the QR code that helps you do that. Now, if you're looking for some practice and you want to do practice questions, don't forget about our question bank, our Q bank. That has over 1,500 questions, and each one of those questions has a breakdown explaining how you got to the correct answer, but also why those incorrect ones aren't correct. If you are new, this is an all-in-one. So this is going to be a very brief overview of the entire first section. Unfortunately, with our time for tonight, we do not have enough time to go into a deep dive of all the subtopics, all the individual little topics, and all the foundational skills for this section and for all the all-in-ones. We just unfortunately don't have enough time with what we're allowed. So, or what we've got on the schedule. But if you find that as we're working things through tonight and you're looking at each portion that I've split up and you see, I'm just not doing so well with this. I need a little bit more practice. Well, definitely check out the question bank, but also make sure to check out these on-demand videos. I cannot recommend them enough because, again, this is an overview of what that whole first section of the reading looks like. But maybe there's just one particular part of it that's giving you a little bit of trouble. And that's what you need to hone in on. And that's what those on demand videos do. They dive into those very specific topics and give you that more in depth look at those topics. So if you have any questions about those, stick around at the end of the night. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have from the night, but we can talk about those. If you're interested in tutoring, you can check out this QR code. My slots are starting to fill up, so make sure you're checking that out. It shows you what I do still have available, and that's for all subjects for reading, English, math, and science. Now, I don't do the math and science. However, Brandon will tell you I am really great at math, but I just don't do math tutoring for Archer. But we have all four subjects up there if you need a tutor. The Sure Pass and the Sure Pass Pro, these are new. So if you are new to us, you're coming in at a great time. Lots of good resources here. And these are discounted bundles. So this is where you really get more bang for your buck because with the SurePass, you get a discounted bundle. You get the QBank and the on-demand videos together. With the SurePass, you get the same thing, but you're also going to have a tutoring component, so you can actually go in and schedule tutoring through that. It's worked into it as well. So make sure to check out each of these. Do not worry. You don't have to worry about snapping a picture of this just yet on your screen. I will send this to you at the end of the night. Once we've gone through everything, I will give you a PDF, a link to a PDF of all the slides and all the notes that we go through tonight. So don't worry, you'll have this and you can pull this up on your own computer at home and you can scan them from there. All right. And I think that's all for that one. Any questions about any of this or just kind of how the flow of everything works for tonight? Oh, welcome. I still see some people coming in. All right, looks like we don't have any questions, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to start getting into it. So, like I mentioned, I've said it several times, tonight is an all-in-one. Now, if I had time, I would sit down and I would go through every little thing with you, but that would take days on end. Tonight is to serve, purpose is to serve as an overview. Now, for the first section of the reading, you'll see that I've broken it down, excuse me, into the subtopics. So tonight, you can see right here, this is why we can't go so in depth because we've got so much to do just to do an overview. So we have 6 subsections in this first part of the reading section. So I've got all of them listed here for you, and we will go through each one of those tonight. Yes, if you're unable to stay for the entire session, then you can actually go right here to this QR code and you can rewatch. You're welcome. Now, you might want to snap a picture of this just really quickly and make sure you get that QR code right there if you think you might not be able to stay. Oops, I went too fast. Were you able to get one? Okay, awesome. All right. Okay, so 6 subsections, we are going to get rolling. So for this first section, and also if you are new here, what I like to do is I like to give you the overview of the material, and then we're going to do some practice. Then we'll move on to the next section and do some practice. So I like to review, practice, and so on. So for this first section, we are going to talk about summarizing a multi-paragraph work. Now, to do this, you need to understand a little bit of terminology. You need to know the different parts to a multi-paragraph passage. So, multi-paragraph means that it's going to have more than one passage. It's going to have several paragraphs in that passage. So, terminology to familiarize yourself with: topic, main idea, key points, and supporting details. Now, what do each of those mean? Thank you for asking. So now we're going to break them down. You take your test on the week of February 1st. Very nervous about this reading section. Well, like I said, hopefully we can ease your mind, and I should have another webinar coming up on reading. Let's see. Yes, I have one more reading one coming up before you test then. So make sure to check out that schedule. And you can always look at my tutoring schedule if you'd like to work one-on-one. Um, so terminology. Let's look at what each of these mean and how they can be determined within a paragraph. Because in this section, that's what you're going to be asked on. That's what they're going to focus on wanting you to know. So the topic, how do we determine the topic? Well, the topic, when you hear the word topic, that means that that is the subject or the general idea of a text. Usually it's going to be expressed in 1, maybe 2 words. It is never, ever, 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 you hear me? never going to be a complete sentence. Hold on, I got a question in the chat box. Are there any webinars coming up before Friday? I take my test Friday morning at 9 a.m. Um, I I do not know. I know that I usually always have Wednesday nights, so I don't have, oh, just math. So there's one more. Oh, yes, that's right. He's got a math one tomorrow night. Yep, that's right. So I usually stick to Wednesdays, and Brandon does do Thursdays. Sometimes he'll steal my Wednesdays, and then I'll switch and take Thursdays, but yeah. Oops, hold on. I lost my little monitor. But yeah, see if you can maybe check out some of our resources with the QBank and stuff and the on-demand videos. So going back, it answers the question. So when you're looking for the topic, I always like to ask myself, what is this about? Like, what is this about? One, maybe two words. But remember, we're not looking at a complete sentence. We're not looking for a complete sentence. It's going to be one, maybe two words that is expressed throughout the entire multi-paragraph passage, or a paragraph if it's just one paragraph. The reason this is important is because this is going to help you identify the main idea and the purpose of the text. So if you get questions about what is the main idea or what is the purpose of this text, being able to identify the topic of the paragraph or of the passage is so vital to being able to help you identify that main idea, because the topic is going to be part of that main idea. And then also, it is part of that purpose of why this text was written, because it's the subject of that text. Now, a couple of tips I have for you when you're trying to find the topic. A couple of things to keep in mind. Look at the title and the headings. The title of that passage, that is a great indicator of what that passage is going to be about. Okay? It's supposed to hit on what that subject is. Same thing with headings. So if you get a passage that has headings, it's multi-paragraph, so it might have some headings integrated into it. Check out those, because if you see a reoccurring pattern, then you're going to start to notice that that's going to most likely be the topic of your passage. And that leads me to my next clue or next tip is pay attention to repeated words or phrases, because remember, it could be one, maybe two words. We are not looking for complete sentences, but look for those words that are repeated. So if you see a word that is repeated, a subject topic that is repeated over and over throughout a paragraph or throughout a multi-paragraph passage, then that is most likely going to be your topic, or it's going to be related to the topic. Again, go back to that question I told you. When I'm reading a passage and I'm trying to find my topic, which is going to lead me to my main idea, I'm constantly asking myself, okay, what is this mostly about? If I had to pick, again, 1 to 2 words, I cannot drill that into you enough, because that's where students get tripped up. When they hear topic, they think main idea, and they get that terminology confused. Topics are not complete sentences like main ideas are. But what is 1 to 2 words that I could summarize this passage in? All right. And then another tip, look at the first and look at the last sentences of of that passage. Most of the time they are going to either introduce or they're going to wrap up, they're going to conclude on what that topic is. So it's going to be mentioned there. It might not be your main idea, but it might introduce what the topic is. And then again, and then last, identify keywords. So focus on nouns or noun phrases that appear central to the text. So again, this ties into that repeated word or those repeated words. Look for nouns that are, constantly being used. Who are they talking about? What are they talking about? Because remember, a noun is a person, place, thing, or an idea. So I've got a little bit of a practice paragraph for you. This is very short, but it's really all I can fit on a screen, and I like to try to keep stuff where it fits on a screen. and we don't have to do a lot of scrolling. I want you to read this passage. I'm going to put a minute and a half on my timer. I want you to read this passage, and I want you to type in the chat or in the comment section, which depending on whichever platform you're on. If you're on Zoom, use chat. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, use the comment section. But I want you to tell me in one, maybe two words, what this entire paragraph is about. Okay? All right, ready? I'm starting in a minute and a half now. Go. All right, take a few more seconds. All right. See a couple people still typing. Go ahead and finish up your answers. All right. So if you put climate change, which almost every single one of you, actually every single one of you did, then yes, you are correct because you actually see it as the very first opening line, climate change. And that is constantly talked about. Talks about the climate change throughout. So good. So that helps you find the topic. Okay. Now, once you found your topic, then you're ready to move on to finding your main idea. Now, the main idea is the central message or concept of that writing. It's going to be the primary point that the author is wishing to make to that reader. This is going to help you build because you then understand, you can have better reading comprehension, and you can understand what that passage is about. So not only are you finding the main idea, but it's also helping you establish what the purpose of that is. And then it's also going to help you understand other parts to that passage, like supporting details. So now when you're trying to find the main idea, a couple of tips for this. You want to look for something that is broad, not too specific. You do not want specific details. That is not going to be your main idea. That will be what we'll talk about in a minute, your supporting details. So we don't want something that is too specific. Look for keywords. So there are certain keywords that, kind of signal that, hey, this is the main idea. And then most of the time, now not all of the time, especially with standardized testing, when you go into it, a lot of the times they like to throw in those trick ones where they're misplaced or they're in uncommon parts of the passage. But most of the time, the main idea will come at the end or within, somewhere within the introduction paragraph of that multi-paragraph passage. So if you have several paragraphs, typically, it's going to be located within that first paragraph. However, like I said, You cannot always rely on that. So don't use that as a fallback like, oh, yep, it's got to be here. No, it's not 100% that it's going to be every time, but it's a good place to start. Now, like I was saying with that broad, I'm going to go back for a second to the broad versus specific. This is why you want to find your topic first. Even if they do not ask you in the question, if they say, what is the main idea? If you find yourself getting stuck finding main ideas, you need to go back and ask yourself, okay, what's the topic? Then you build off of that. Okay. So with the main idea, we're looking for something that is broad and not specific because that it needs to be broad enough that it can summarize what that entire passage is about. If it's too specific, if it's too detailed oriented, it's focusing on one thing when it can, and then it cannot cover everything that's discussed within the paragraph. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? All right. So now what I want you to do is the main idea the same as the topic sentence? No. Not in a multi-paragraph passage. It's not the same thing. So the main idea is going to be the concept of the entire passage, all those multi-paragraphs. A topic sentence will tell you what that one specific paragraph is about. And that's for those supporting detail paragraphs. And they're all backing up and they're specific examples of what that main idea is. All right. Now, because of the screen size, I do only have one paragraph right here for this practice, but this gives you a little bit of an idea of how to ease into finding main idea. So what I want you to do is I want you to read this paragraph, and the question is A, B, C, D, which of those is the main idea of the passage? Okay. So I'm going to put a minute and a half. I'll do a minute and a half because it looked like that's about what everybody needed last time. I'm going to put a minute and a half on the timer and then we'll come back and check. Okay, ready, set, go. All right, let's take a look. So for this passage, or for this paragraph, excuse me, paragraph, the main idea is C. Efforts to reduce pollution are necessary for protecting public health. Now, most everyone got that right, but a lot of people probably thought that it was A. Pollution in urban areas is a serious problem. But now let's look at it. Okay, so pollution in urban areas poses significant health risks to residents. This is what we would actually call, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, you can use Zoom menu too. That's fine. Now this is what we call that first sentence is what we call an introductory detail. That's just easing us into the topic. So we know that this paragraph is going to be about pollution, okay? Because that's the consistent word that we're seeing over and over again. The combination of vehicle emissions, industrial pollutants, and airborne particles contributes to poor air quality, leading to respiratory problems and other health issues. Now, this is way too specific because it's giving me those specific details. So, this is not going to be a main idea sentence. Efforts to reduce pollution levels, such as promoting cleaner transportation, methods in implementing stricter emission standards, are crucial for protecting public health and improving overall air quality. Now, notice how this is very specific as well. And someone mentioned that they thought that C, they didn't think C was the answer because they thought it was too specific. Well, this one is too specific. This sentence here within the paragraph is too specific because it talks about such as. Notice that wording right there. Such as, okay? Promoting cleaner transportation methods and implementing stricter emissions. They're all crucial. Those are specific details. Those are supporting details to illustrate the main idea. What are they illustrating though? They're illustrating the efforts to reduce those pollution levels. So for this paragraph, for this paragraph and for this question, that's where I was going with that. With this question, you'll notice that A, B, C, D, none of those are word for word sentences that you could just pull out. So you kind of had to readjust the wording of the paragraph to how they are in the answer options. So pollution in urban areas is a serious problem, excuse me. Now, would you say that if you pick that one as your answer, for example, would you say that every single sentence in that paragraph can be summarized by that? Is the entire paragraph talking only about how the pollution in urban areas is a serious health problem? No. Poor air quality affects public health. Well, it talks about the public health. Where was it? Public health right here. Okay. But the entire paragraph does not focus on the poor air quality, does it? No, exactly. But if we look at this paragraph, efforts to reduce pollution are necessary for protecting public health. Well, would you say that this first sentence, pollution in urban areas poses significant health risk to residents, would that be a supporting reason, or would that back up if the efforts are needed to reduce pollution? Yes, because it says it's posing as, oh my goodness, I cannot speak tonight. It's like the alliteration just took over my body. Whew. So it's talking about possesses significant health risk. So therefore that would be a reason for efforts. The combination of vehicle emissions, industrial pollutants, airborne particles contributes to poor air quality. Would those be reasons why you need to have or there need to be efforts to reduce pollution? Yes. Efforts to reduce pollution. So that's where it's introduced right there. Efforts to reduce pollution levels. Promoting cleaner transportation. Methods. Implementing stricter emission standards. Those are all examples of how you can do it. So that's supporting that as well. Now with D, just so we don't leave that little one out, cleaner transportation methods can improve air quality. The entire passage is not talking about promoting cleaner transportation methods. So that's why that one wouldn't be an answer option. So be careful. Now that you've seen that, now you kind of got to think about how, with questions like this, the answer is not going to be word for word within the passage. And so when you're looking at those A, B, C, D options, you got to kind of think about, okay, the way they have it worded here, think of it like an umbrella. This main idea sentence needs to be an umbrella and cover all of this paragraph. Or if it's a multi-paragraph, it needs to cover all the paragraphs. All the paragraphs need to be able to fall under that umbrella idea of the main idea. Does that help if you missed that one? Now, if you missed that one, please do not sit there. I hope you're not sitting there beating yourself up, because guess what? You just learned this. I just taught you about finding a topic. I just taught you about what the main idea is, okay, and how to approach it. This is a learning process. So if you did not get that one right, do not sit there and beat yourself up, because most of the time, I'm going to give you a little pep talk really fast. Most of the time, the reasons why students miss a question is not necessarily because they don't know the content and they're not capable of coming up with the answer because they don't because of their topic knowledge. It's because they don't understand or they're not familiar with how to read the question. Does that make sense to you? So it's not that they don't know the material. It's the fact of they get tripped up by the way the question is worded. So really what you want to do is when you're working on these, if you miss one like this, make sure you're taking note of how the questions are worded and see if that is why you missed it. Did you not understand? Maybe you didn't look at the question a certain way or the way it's intended, or maybe you didn't look at the answer options the way they were intended. I'm nervous about the time test, so that's what freaks me out about the real test. Yes, that was always, I just had this conversation with a coworker the other day because I actually do not give time tests in my college classes because I was a very nervous test taker. I had a lot of test anxiety. I still do actually. I'm always been a nervous test taker because I don't like the clock ticking down. However, if you have time, oh, sorry, I saw another question pop up. But if you have time to study, what I would recommend is that I would practice, practice, practice timing yourself. That way you can see where are you spending the most amount of time, and then that way you can kind of work on speeding up. Also, another tip I have for you, some of you have mentioned you're nervous about testing, so maybe um this might help you. If you're nervous about the reading portion because of the time part, again, if you've got the time to do it, build it into your schedule so that you can just practice timing yourself reading, whether it's the newspaper, it's an article, it's a book, whatever. Set a timer and see how far you can read. Then, not the same passage because you've already probably memorized it, but find a different passage of the same length and time yourself again and see how fast you're getting through it. Okay? That's one thing I've seen that helps students sometimes. So, another person asked me, isn't the main idea the first sentence in the last paragraph? No. So, typically, in most academic writing, the main idea would be the last sentence of the first paragraph. However, like I mentioned before, with standardized testing, that's not always the case because what are they trying to do? They're trying to make you hunt for it. I'm not going to say they're trying to trick you, but they're trying to make you hunt for it. So with standardized testing, I never recommend that you go in and say, oh, it's always going to be in this spot, because when you go into it thinking that, that's going to be the time where you get the one that does not fall in that category. But typically, in the academic world, you would have the main idea, the thesis of a multi-paragraph passage. It would be the last sentence of the first paragraph. And then it would be restated in that last paragraph somewhere. But for standardized testing, I would just throw that whole thing about, oh, it's always going to be in this one spot, because it's not. Mm-mm. Any other questions? Great questions. Oop, I already moved to my next page. All right, so someone asked me a minute ago about were main ideas topic sentences. No. Now, in a single paragraph, it could be considered that, but because it's a single paragraph, it would be considered the main idea regardless. Okay. But a key point, this is terminology that students forget about. And this one's important for this test because this is how they're going to label it. Key points. These are going to elaborate on the main idea of each individual paragraph. So this is what you would typically call that topic sentence. So these are going to elaborate on that main idea because the main idea, remember, that's going to cover every single paragraph. Okay? It's going to be the whole idea of the entire passage. However, with key points, this is where you're breaking it down and giving maybe one specific example of that main idea. And that's what that one paragraph, because remember, this is a multi-paragraph passage, that's what that one paragraph is going to focus on. So, for example, if I had the main idea of my multi-paragraph passage and it was there are numerous benefits of regular exercise for overall health. That's what my entire multi-paragraph passage is about. Okay? Now, one of those paragraphs, and it's going to typically be that first not first paragraph, but it's going to be that second paragraph of the passage. This is where you would focus on one supporting reason. So one supporting point. So what is one of the benefits of regular exercise for overall health? It would be improving cardiovascular health. So my first body paragraph, what we call the body paragraph, so that second paragraph of the passage, that's going to focus only on that idea of, or that key point of improving cardiovascular health. The next paragraph might talk about how it boosts mood. And then the next one might talk about a benefit of regular exercise is that it manages weight. So each of those paragraphs are going to focus on one specific supporting point. And that would be the key point. That's why it's called a key point. That's why they reference it like that. Some people would consider this to be a supporting reason or a supporting point, but are key points different than the supporting details? Oh, you just got to get right out my mouth. So, with the way it's worded for this test, okay, this is what makes it so tricky. If I were in a typical reading class for college at the college level, or if I were teaching my freshman comp class, I would call this a supporting detail. However, for the test, they're going to call it a key point. Okay? They're going to reference supporting details as something different. Okay? And I'm going to show you that in a minute, what they consider supporting details. But for the sake of this exam, that would be considered a key point. And so, yes, they would be different than supporting details. Okay? And I'll show you how it all breaks down in an outline in just a second. But these would be key points, are those specific examples of that main idea. Now, supporting details, which you just asked me about, those are going to be the details of the key point. They're going to be those very specific points that back up and illustrate what that key point is. So, if my main idea of my passage, the whole shebang, all those paragraphs together, is that there are numerous benefits of regular exercise for overall health. That's what all my paragraphs are talking about. That's the common theme throughout. Well, my first key point, so my first body paragraph, so that's going to be your second paragraph within the passage typically. That one's going to talk about, that key point is going to be, that whole paragraph is talking about how it improves cardiovascular health. All right, so it might begin with one benefit of regular exercise is that it improves cardiovascular health. That's what that whole paragraph is going to focus on. But within that paragraph, you're going to illustrate and you're going to break it down a little bit further by giving supporting details. How does it improve cardiovascular health? Well, it strengthens the heart muscle. It enhances blood circulation. It improves oxygen delivery to cells. So all of those are supporting details that break down that key point just a little bit further. Does that make sense? It's weird how, for the exam, for this exam, this is how it's worded. Main ideas, it's if you're working down the order of things, there's the main idea, the key points, and then the supporting details. And as they go down the list, they get more narrow and more specific. Okay? So what's a benefit? It improves cardiovascular health. How does it improve cardiovascular health? It strengthens, it enhances, it improves. So it's getting more and more specific as it works down the chart. Now, if I were in one of my reading classes, if I was teaching my collegiate reading classes that I've taught before, they would actually call this, you might have heard it called the main idea, the major supporting detail, and then minor supporting details. Some of you may have heard it like that. However, for this is the terminology. This is what I was talking about a while ago when I gave you that other little pep talk about how sometimes students, they know what it is, but they don't understand the terminology. They don't understand how the question's being asked. That's the difference here. So main idea, key points, then supporting details. All right. So now I do have some practice, but because of the way of the structuring, I'm going to save it for the end. So we're going to look at some practice at the end on how to compile all of that together in an exam like in an exam like question. Whew. These tongue twisters tonight, people. Now that covers the whole first section. So topic, main idea, key points, supporting details. Now with the second section of this portion, this is where you're going to talk about forming inferences, drawing conclusions about the meaning and the purpose of the text. So that's a lot. Well, you know me. First things first, let's talk about the terminology. Let's make sure that you understand what this means. So, what is an inference? Thank you for asking. An inference is the ideas, or they are the ideas that are suggested, they are not stated. You will not find it word for word on that paper or on that computer screen right in front of you. That would be too easy, right? And life is just not that easy. It's not always that box of chocolates that Tom Hanks told us about. I want my money back, people. I want my money back. So, they are not going to be word for word. This is where you have to read the passage, and it's kind of like that saying, you ever heard you got to read between the lines? Well, that's what you got to do here. Okay. Now, inferences in reading materials, these are logical conclusions. Okay. So channel your inner Spock, Mr. Spock. We got any Star Trekkie fans out there? Any Trekkies? So they are logical conclusions that are made between that information that is directly on the page to ideas that are not directly stated. Okay. So you're going to base your inferences, you're going to draw those conclusions, make those conclusions from that information that's on the paper. But when it comes time to find that inference or make that inference, just know that it's not going to be word for word on the paper. A couple of tips on how to make inferences or draw conclusions. That's the same thing when you're making an inference and drawing a conclusion. But make sure that you're using the clues provided by the text. Context clues will be your best friend. Then apply your own experience, your own logic, your own common sense. Bet you didn't think that would be applied right? Well, wrong. Now, sometimes students will just cite themselves out because they're sitting there stressing because they're reading a paragraph about something and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I am not an expert on whatever that paragraph's about or that passage is about." Well, you know what? That's where oftentimes it will work in your favor. Okay? So just don't let it psych you out because guess what? You actually get to approach it with clear, fresh eyes and you don't have any bias because of your background knowledge. So sometimes that can be beneficial. So take that win where you can. Now, this is a tip, and some of you, I think, we worked on part 3 of the reading, and inferences are located in that section. Now, this is a tip that I give students because I find it very helpful. Why is this not scrolling? Okay. Um, the yes or no. Oh yeah, so you've used it before, right? And it works. Yes. So someone already backed me up in the comment section. So ask yourself yes or no questions at the end of the statement. So if they're asking you to make an inference, which of the following A, B, C, D are inferences that you can make? I always like to start off and say yes or no, and then I read the statement. If I can read that statement and answer yes, then that's going to be an inference I can make. If I answer no, then, well, it's not an inference I can make. So I like to do that. Even as a student myself, if I were sitting here going through it, that's what I'm going to do. Because I love a checklist and I love to be able to mark things off. So if I can check yes or cross out no, it helps me. And that might help ease some of your nerves too. So a couple guidelines and tips for being able to make inferences. Never, ever, ever lose sight of the information that is available. While that inference is not going to be directly on the paper in front of you, you need to base your information or your inferences on the information, on the facts as much as possible. You don't want to go off script. Again, use your background knowledge, your experience, your common sense to help you, but do not let it cripple you. Okay? If you're not an expert on that topic matter, that's okay. That's not what you're being tested on. You're being tested on the inference, making that inference from what you're reading. Now, with multiple choice testing, okay, you're going to have an A, B, C, D most of the time. Consider alternatives. Do not simply accept the first inference that comes to mind or the first answer option that you get to. Instead, with inferences and with these inference type questions, you need to make sure that you are reading A, B, C, and D all the way through. I know it's time consuming, but trust me, the way it's going to be worded is A might look like it's an inference, but then you get down all the way to D and it's like, oh no. This is more clearly the inference I can make from it. So they're going to have some that look like they're borderline, but there's always going to be one that is just a resounding better choice. Okay? It's going to be clear. It's going to be an overall inference that can be made. All right? Now, I think some of you may have seen this example before, but trauma. This is why I can't do construction. I cannot live in construction because of this stuff. Read this passage. Okay? All right? Find comfort from my pain. But I want you to read this passage. I've got 5 statements at the bottom. 2 of those are inferences that you can make based off the material provided. I want you to go through and tell me which of those 5, there are 2 of them. I've already told you I'm helping you out. 2 of the 5, which 2 of the 5 are inferences that can be made based off what you're reading from that passage. Okay? All right, I'm going to put a minute and a half on the timer, and then we're going to come back and check them. Okay? Ready, set, and go. All right, let's go through and take a look. So, based off of the statements and based off what you read in the passage, you should have selected 3 and 5. And it looks like most everyone got those right. Now, how many of you, just to take a quick little poll, how many of you actually did the yes or no? Like, so you read it and you said yes or no, the plumber was recommended by a friend. You did? You did too? Do you find that it helped you? Oh, good. Awesome. All right, so now we found something that works for you. So now you can look at that when you're reading through inferences. Ask yourself, yes or no. Okay? And remember it, we're basing it off of what we read within the passage. Okay? Well, that's it for that section. See how short, sweet, and simple it is? That's all that section covers. Now, when you get to those questions, they might word it a little differently. So think about it. They might say, what's an inference? Can you draw a conclusion? Based off the passage. And they might not even use the word inference or conclusion in the question, but if it says based off the passage, you know you're still drawing that inference and making that conclusion. Okay? Everybody feeling good so far? All right. So now we're going to move on to 1.3. So this is exhibiting knowledge of written directions. Sounds very scary, right? Well, for this section, what you want to do is you want to be able to identify words or phrases that signify order. So you want to be able to find order words. That's also what we call transitions. You also want to be able to tell if there are contradictions between steps. So this is where if you are not an expert on a certain topic, that's where it's going to come in to help you. Because you might see something and you're like, that doesn't make sense. Those steps, like, it just doesn't work. Like, I don't see the bridge between them. Well, that's going to be your instincts telling you something's off. Trust your instincts, okay? Identify priorities within directions. That needs to be something that you can do from this section. So what's the most significant instructions? Identify relationships between procedure steps. So if they give you procedure steps, what are some relationships there? And then this is going to draw back off of the last section that we just talked about. So being able to determine logical conclusions based off the information that the directions give you. So now let's talk about a couple things. Signal words. This is very important within this section. Signal words are oftentimes called transition words, or you might see them referred to as cue words. These are going to be words or phrases that indicate the relationship between ideas within whatever work it is that you're looking at. So they're there to show, they're there. They are there to show the transition between thoughts to connect ideas and show relationships between ideas. They are going to help guide you as the reader or whoever's the listener throughout that text, and it makes it more coherent and easier to follow. Signal words, there are different types of signal words. So they can show sequence, cause and effect, comparison, contrast, addition, conclusion. So they can do a lot of different things. They are not just one specific type. And like I mentioned, there's sequential or chronological, so it goes in a certain order. Cause and effect. So what's the cause? Here are the effects. Compare or contrast. Compare and contrast. So showing similarities and or differences. Examples. So you're giving specific examples of something. Addition. Now that is not math, okay? We haven't skipped to tomorrow night's webinar. But with addition, you're showing that you're adding to a list. Think of it like a grocery list, and you're just adding to it. You're listing off things. And then conclusion. Transition words, signal words, they can be used to show that you are wrapping things up and you are, coming to an end on whatever it is you're talking about. Now, for this section, you might also see questions that focus around sets of directions. Do not freak out, okay? I'm sure most of you have, bought something from the store and you've had to read the recipe on the back and it's got the instructions. If you're baking cake, you got to get these ingredients together, mix so and so ingredients, now add in all these other ingredients. That's the same thing as what you're looking at here. So look at the list of items. How are signal words? Here's that again. Signal words. They are there to establish a pattern of organization. So they're helping break down and illustrate how you're moving from one list item to the next, or one step to the next. All right. Now, this is an example of a question where you would need to put statements because they're getting fancy with it. So now you got to rearrange sentences sometimes. So now I want you to take these. I've labeled them 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. But I want you to shuffle around and tell me, use those numbers as an indicator for the sentence. But I want you to tell me, if it were to go in sequential order, what order do you really need to put these sentences in? Okay. All right. So I'm going to put a minute on the timer. Seems like everybody did well with that last time. So we're going to put a minute on the timer and then we're going to come back and check. So sequential order. Ready, set, go. All right. I see a couple people still typing. Go ahead and finish up your answers. All right, let's take a look. So the correct order should have been 3, 4, 1, 2. And let's take a look at those and read them. So carpooling, well, it reordered the number here, but originally 3, 4, 1, 2. So carpooling can be a rewarding experience. All of these, so here what you're trying to do is you're also trying to look for the main idea. So think about what we talked about earlier. Main idea, key points, supporting details. So work your way down from most broad to specific. So carpooling can be a rewarding experience. All of these other sentences are talking about carpooling. For one thing, because remember 3, 4, 1, 2. So for one thing, well, it tells us that's going to be the start of your list. Carpooling allows you to share in the cost of gas. Also is the next logical transition to use. When you carpool, you are more likely to reduce the amount of mileage you put on your car. Finally. So this shows us that we're wrapping up. So this illustrates that it should be the last one. Riding with someone else allows you to interact with someone while traveling. Okay. So someone said, is number 3 right there an introductory sentence? No, that would actually just be considered the main idea. But close. All right. So any questions on that? Yep. Can we put number 3 as the main idea in the last sentence? What do you mean? Oh, I think I know what you mean. So, like, instead, you would move this one and it would be actually the last sentence. So, it would be for one thing, also, finally, carpooling can be a rewarding experience. Is that what you're talking about? So, it would have been 4, 1, 2, 3. It could be. You are correct. It really could be. However, based off the 4 sentences you have to introduce an idea. So when they have these types of questions with this type of ordering, you've got to introduce the idea first. Because if I were to walk up to you and I were to say, okay, for one thing, you're going to look at me and you're going to be like, what, chickadee? For one thing, what? What are we talking about? One thing about what? Yes, these are going to be easier because this is the practice to ease you into it. We're going to do some exam like questions in a little bit. This is more meant to, these types of practices are meant to show you kind of applying the knowledge we're talking about at the moment. But we are going to do some practice that's a little bit harder and looks more like the exam type questions. But this is really just to get you in the mindset of looking at, like easing into it. Sorry, I kind of got stuck in my brain there for a second. Hold on. Okay, so that makes sense. So you really want to make sure that it's just presenting it in a logical manner. QBank had mind-blowing sequencing. What do you mean? It was more difficult. Why, thank you. I wrote those too. Yeah. So QBank, those are difficult. They are more like the TEAS. Like I said, this is just to ease you into it. I didn't want to scare you off. Not at first. But yeah, QBank, and I do have a practice later. All right. So any questions on, because remember, tonight's just that overview. We're not doing that deep dive, but we will do more test like practice in a little bit. So when you are trying to do these types of questions, really pay attention to those transition words for one thing. Also, finally. And remember, in this example, they came at the very beginning of each sentence. On other ones, they might be located within the sentence itself. So the one or the also, they might be located further into that sentence. They might be somewhere like in the middle of the sentence. Okay? So any questions on those? All right then. Well, we are rocking and rolling. We are moving to 1.4. Looks like we're making great time so we can do our practice test in a little bit. So 1.4. So this is being able to determine particular information within a text. This just means that they're going to ask you a question about something you read in the text. That's just a fancy way of saying it. And you're going to locate that particular information from that text. Oh, you got the chat working. Yay. All right, so couple steps to help you locate certain information. First things first, understand the purpose of your search. Okay, I know that probably sounds very basic, and you're like, well, duh. I know, but listen to me. Before you start looking at the text, if you are one of those people that find yourself crunching time, like you're really pressed for time and you have a hard time with reading and answering questions within a time test. Well, before you dive into the text, clarify what you're looking for. Ask yourself, are you looking for a specific detail, such as a date, a name? Do you just need to summarize what the main idea of that paragraph or passage is about? Or are you searching for an answer to a particular question? The way that you can go about doing this and knowing this is by reading the questions first. Now, some people don't. Some people like to read the passage, then read the questions, and then go back and look. I don't know about y'all, but, and this is terrible, you can shame me, but I don't care. I am not one of those people that likes surprises. When I read a book, I'm going to read that first paragraph. I mean, I'm not first paragraph, but I'm going to read that first couple pages into that first chapter. I might make it through that first chapter, but Shug, don't you know, without a doubt, I'm going to flip to the end of that book and I'm going to read that ending. I really am. No lies. I'm going to read the ending of the book before most of the time, before I can even get halfway through that introduction. I've already read the end of the book. I'm going to read those last few pages, maybe that whole last chapter before I read anything else in that book. You want to know why? Because I don't like surprises. Same thing with testing. I found that for me, because of my test anxiety, I like to read my questions first. I like to read my questions, especially if there's 4 questions on one passage. I would read through all 4 questions first. Because then, as I'm reading it, my brain can go ahead and start processing and being on the lookout for things. It actually helps me because I also have a hard time focusing. Okay. And when I'm reading, especially even when I was testing, there's that pressure to pay attention, but my mind would start to wander. So, by reading my questions first, it helped my mind stay focused. Like, oh, this is what I'm on the lookout for. Like, I was on a safari hunt. I was looking for the zebra. I was looking for the giraffe. I was looking for the tiger. That's not, tigers are not on safari. Never mind. That's lions. So, I was looking for lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. So, it helped me focus. If that's something you struggle with, do a practice test and try doing that and reading the questions first, then reading the passage. See if that helps you out. It might not work for everybody because everybody is different. Everybody is very individual in how they test and how they test well. But that's just a little tip for you. Okay. Because I'm going to tell you, I am human and I am one of the most anxious test takers that you will ever encounter. And I have lived through taking the TEAS. I almost missed my TEAS exam because I got lost on the way because it was on campus and I almost got lost. My goodness, you're talking about nerve wracking. That was nerve wracking. Now, skim and scan the text. That's another step. So, skimming, this is where you're going to quickly read through the text, get a general idea. So, you're not like really honing in on specific details. You're really just skimming it to look for what's the general idea. What's that main idea of the passage? This is where you can focus on headings, subheadings. If there's any bold or italicized words, you best bet you better look at those. All right. Scanning, this is when you're moving your eyes quickly over that text. I mean, you are going at Superman speed and you're finding those specific keywords or phrases that are related to what you're looking for. So if you've read that question and then you're reading back through the passage, where did you see? This is if after you've read the passage all the way through. But where did you see certain words or phrases located at? Now, this sounds silly, but I'm going to tell you what. If you are taking it on the computer, does anybody take it on paper anymore? I don't know. But either ways, we don't discriminate between paper or digital. Either ways, use your finger or a pointer, so that might be like a pencil or something. But I mean, you got your finger right there. Use your finger to help guide your focus. A lot of times, if you point at words while you're reading them, it helps you to retain what you've read better. It helps you to focus and also to be able to skim through quicker. Okay. Look for context clues. Context clues are going to be your best friend. So once you've located a potential keyword or section, and I don't know what's wrong with my indentation here. I'm so sorry, y'all. It gets, when I save it as a PDF, sometimes it gets a little wonky. So read the sentences before and after the keyword. So maybe you found those keywords that relate back to the question that you're being asked. Read that sentence before it, read that sentence after it. Make sure you are paying attention to signal words, the ones like in contrast. However, for example, I skipped right over that one, but it's the first one. For example, that one's a big one. It's like, whoo, right here. Sometimes that one is just screaming like, this is where your answer's at. Don't judge my singing there. It's been a long day. But for example, that's a big giveaway. However, that's going to show a contrast. Therefore, is more wrapping it up specifically. Those are going to show you those details. That's probably going to be where your answers are at. If you see numbers, if you see dates, if you see capitalization for proper nouns, look at those. They are there for a reason. Okay. And then if you can, take notes and summarize. If you can highlight. If you can underline, if you can jot down little words or phrases that help you focus on those key details. All right. This is when you want to go to full-blown nerd status. And we're not discriminating, we're embracing. Okay? This is when you pull out all the tips and tricks. So, again, this one's going to be easier. So you might think this is easy, but this is just practicing the concept. Read through this passage, and I've got 2 questions. There's not A, B, C, D, because remember, this is not meant to be a test-like question. This is meant to be a practice question. So, I want you to go through, and I want you to tell me what are the answers for 1 and 2 right here. Okay? I'm going to put a minute and a half on my timer, and then we're going to come back and check. Ready? Steady. Don't fall. Go. All right. So you probably thought, well, crazy lady, this is just way too easy. Well, I told you, it's really just easing you into it. So what year did Neil Armstrong land on the moon? 1969. What was the name of the mission? Apollo 11. Notice how those are dates, they have numbers, they are proper nouns. Okay? I'm trying to drive home a point to you. Look for those particular things. Okay. All right. Any questions on that one? Again, they're definitely not going to be this easy on the exam, but we're easing into it. Here's another one for you. I'm going to put 1.5 minutes on the timer. See if you can find this one, okay? Actually, I'm not going to put 1.5 minutes. I'm only going to put 45 seconds. Ready, set, go. All right, let's take a look. So you probably thought this was easy peasy lemon squeezy too, but still 5.5. So that was B. All right there in that first sentence. Somebody said, I wish they were that easy. Yeah, me too. I wish for your sake they were. But again, we're easing into it. We don't want to get too overworked tonight. All right, so that's essentially what we're trying to do there. Okay, again, we are going to do a little bit more in-depth practice in just a little bit. We're going to do more of a cumulative review just to see how you've learned it throughout the night. For 1.5, what you are doing is you are trying to use graphs, charts, other types of visuals. They might have maps. When I was coming along back in those olden days, really, I'm not that old though, so don't date me. But, what was the thing? Oh, in my olden days, maps were the big thing. They really like to use a lot of maps. Now, diagrams, they'll have pictures of things being put together, like you're trying to construct something and put it together. That's a visual. But you got to be able to analyze, interpret, apply different information. So, a couple things about being able to find information in a visual. So, no matter what type of visual it is, you need to understand. You need to understand what type of graphic is it? Is it a map? Is it a chart? Is it an image? Make sure you can identify key elements. So, what's the title if they've got a title up there for a chart? Are there labels? Okay. Is there bold wording? Is there underlined wording? Always look for those things because there's a reason why it's in bold. There's a reason why it's underlined. There's a reason why it's labeled. There's a purpose to it. Okay. Now, make sure you can analyze the data that is presented. So if it gives you a chart or a graph, make sure you can understand how to read different types of charts, different types of graphs. Then you're going to have to be able to interpret that data. So you take that data and you apply it to questions. And then this is where I was talking about earlier. It builds on it. So inferences, we talked about that in a previous section. So you do need to be able to draw conclusions based off the information that's given, but the answer is not going to be word for word on the page in front of you. I like how you said examine the questions. And it works. So reading the questions before you read the paragraph, that works for you. Oh, good. Yes. I always found that was helpful. Now, being able to decipher visual representations. So you again, you got to understand what the purpose of the visual representation is. Is it a diagram showing you how to put together a piece of equipment? Is it a map? Okay. Is it an image of something? If, again, when I was coming along, maps were the big thing. If there is a scale, like they're showing you like that 2 blocks on this graph equals 1.5 miles, make sure you pay attention to what the scale is. If there's a scale up there on that visual, there is a reason why that scale is up there. I guarantee you they are going to try to trick you on something. Because I remember we would have there were some questions that would say, okay, how many miles is it from point A to point B on this map? Well, it would have a grid and you would see, okay, well, it was 3 blocks apart. So you would think, and there would be an answer that would say 3. Oh, you're welcome. Make sure you check out that the rewatch QR code. But it would say 3. However, if you looked at the scale, for every block that you had to move to get from point A to point B, that represented 4 miles. So if I had to move 3 blocks and each of those blocks represented 4, this is where you got to draw on your math. So 3 times 4 was actually 12. And 12 was one of those answer options. But 3 was up there too because they were trying to trick you because you're automatically thinking, okay, I moved 1, 2, 3. And then you see, oh, B is 3. And no. Is the rewatch QR code on the website? Um, I believe so, but if you need to log out, everybody hold on. Close your eyes if you need to. Don't get whiplash. But we're going to scroll back through just really quickly. I'm going to go back to it for you. There you go. Can you take a picture of that really quickly? If you have an iPhone, you can actually take a picture of this and then click on it within the picture. And it's that QR code right there. You're so welcome. Join us again if you can. All right, hold on. Close your eyes. This may cause seizures. No, I'm just kidding. All right, but check that scale. If there is a scale, there's probably a reason. Look for patterns and trends. Okay, so if it's got a diagram, and I've seen one, I can't remember now, it's so my brain is mush, but it was where it pretty much showed me like 3 progression charts, and you could see patterns on how it was growing. Make sure to pay attention to those as well. Now, if it's a chart, make sure you are checking labels and you are checking legends. Now, that's very similar to a scale, but it's a little bit different. But in terms of if you have a legend, it's going to be like if you have a scale. There is a reason why they gave you that information. They don't just willy-nilly just give that out for no reason. They don't think, oh, it's so pretty, I'm just going to use this as a decoration. Don't we wish? There's an ulterior motive there, people. Let's not even pretend that it's not. So, check labels, check legends. Sometimes they will have things turned on a different axis or something, and they'll have it labeled really wonky, and it's there to trip you up. Compare and contrast different elements. So if they have different colors up there, you best better pay attention to that. If there's a different size, if something's one size and something else looks a different size, there's probably a reason. If there's shading, so if you've got a bar graph and they've shaded things differently, so one's got polka dots, one's got stripes, there's a reason for that, okay? I'm not trying to make you a conspiracy theorist, but I'm just saying there is a reason for everything that they do, okay? And that's what you've got to train your brain to be on the lookout for. Now, again, when I'm looking at these, I like to ask myself, what information am I trying to pull out of this? What do I need to know from this visual? And I do that by reading my questions first. Again, that's what works for me as a student and a test taker. You do you, boo. Okay? If that doesn't work for you and you like to look at it first and then read the questions, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, everybody is their own individual person. However, I'm just telling you, from my perspective, that's just what works for me. Okay? Now, with these visuals, you do need to be on high alert. Not too high alert, okay? But you need to be on high alert to recognize misleading information. So make sure you're checking the source, check the data, make sure you're looking back over that data. If it's some kind of statistical chart or something like that, make sure there's nothing really wonky labeled to kind of throw you off. Again, and I cannot say this enough, it's probably because I got a little bit of trauma from it. Check that scale. If they put a scale, if they put a legend, you better check it. Okay? Because again, it's gonna be one of those answer options that 3, because they think, oh well, you're in such a rush and you're counting 1 2 3 and you automatically see 3 down there that you circle it and think that's the correct answer. However, you forgot to check your scale. Be careful that whatever visual you're being given and then asked a question about, that you are checking for what we call cherry picking. This is when only certain data points are included. Okay. Check for bias. So look how they're portraying things. Pay attention to titles. Pay attention to labels. Pay attention to the legends. All right. If it seems negative, there might be an alternative reason. And then check for the content that is presented. So again, you cannot make an inference, you cannot draw a conclusion off of information that has not been provided to you. Okay? Now, a couple other examples of misleading information. I told you about cherry picking data. So this is when they go in and they say, "Oh, I'm only going to show this data that supports my reasoning." Well, check to see, did they include all the years within a certain time frame, or did they skip a couple? Maybe that wasn't showing the data they wanted to show. All right. Are they missing a certain age group? So if it says that they're going to classify by age groups, but you see a particular age group that's missing, why? Scaling issues, again, third time's the charm. I cannot say it enough. If there is a scale, you better check it. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right. That's last time. But I'm just saying, you better check that scale. Now, look for misleading labeling like we talked about. So, is it ambiguous? So, is it vague? Is it unclear? Is it imply a different meaning than what that is actually showing? So, is there a conflict between what you see and what you read? Now, be careful of manipulating visual elements. So, this is where they have changed the size, changed the color, even changed the shape in a graph in order to create a misrepresentation of the data. Right? And then using biased sources. So it is misleading if you are only using a pro source when there's an opposing side. Okay? All right. So I've been talking for a little bit. So how is everybody feeling? Everybody good so far? All right. Now, how do we determine the information from these visuals? Just like when you're reading a multi-paragraph passage, make sure that you understand what the main argument is. So, why is this being given? But also remember, for visuals for this section, they can also include things from like sources and stuff. So make sure you're understanding what the main point is. So why is this author trying, or what is this author trying to convey as far as the topic and a main idea? Determine the scope. What does that mean? Well, again, thank you for asking. So this is where you're going to figure out if the author is focusing on a specific part of the topic or if they're looking for more of that broad overview. Again, there are some questions on this that do not have a visual to them. Okay, this is where on the back end of it, they want you to think about things as far as using different types of sources and different types of material. Look for supporting evidence. So search for information that backs up the author's main argument. So is there a visual to go with a written piece? Make sure you're evaluating the relevance. So judge whether each idea or each argument that is mentioned is important for understanding that main point. Now, if they list the source citation, if they put a source note at the bottom, again, there's a reason why. You need to go back and pay attention to it. Think about, analyze that source, where it comes from, who wrote it. Think about whether that author is trustworthy and knowledgeable about that topic. That's what you should be doing before you even start putting the source in. When you're trying to find the source, these are also questions you'd want to ask. But you're not having to do that for the exam. Sorry. The freshman comp instructor, professor in me started coming out. Analyze connections. So explore how different ideas or arguments are related to each other, even though they're not directly linked to the main point. So this is for more of those written type questions that you might see for this section. Now, with supplemental information, this again is going to those ones that are not visuals, but make sure that you can identify the main argument. Assess whatever evidence is currently being given. Consider the audience. So who do you think that this piece is intended for? Now, you can't go and research on the test, but think about, is there any research that is provided? Okay. Um, let's see. Incorporate evidence, integrate new evidence properly with citations. Where was I going with that? Oh, think about how they would incorporate sources and citations as well. Review and refine, revise the argument. So does it effectively communicate the main point, key points, and supporting details? Those are all things you'd want to be on the lookout for. All right, so now I don't have visuals here because I want you to also get used to the ones that are non-visual. But here's a couple practice questions. I want you to look at these. I'm going to put 45 seconds on the timer, and then we're going to come back, okay? Ready, set, and go. All right, I see a couple people still typing, so go ahead and get your answers in. All right, let's take a look. So you should have selected A and C for this one. So if you put A, you were correct. If you put C, you were correct, but you should have put both actually. All right, any questions on that one? All right, everybody good? You get why it's A and C? I sure can. So, in an essay that argues for the benefits of a plant-based diet, the author may need to gather supplemental evidence for the following. So, the environmental impact on animal agriculture. Well, if you're trying to argue the benefits of a plant-based diet, you might want to look up the impact of animal agriculture, because if there are negative consequences to animal agriculture, then that would be one of the benefits of a plant-based diet. So that's why that one would be an answer option. Now with B, the nutritional benefits of consuming an animal product, nutritional benefits. This is showing the positives of consuming an animal product. But if I'm trying to argue for the benefits of a plant-based diet, why would I want to worry about supporting the other side of the argument? So that one, it's really just if I think if it'll allow you or it'll ask you. This one I just didn't ask you, but most of the time they'll tell you like they'll tell you to select all that apply. I just didn't put it in the instructions here. Has anybody seen on the test um where it had multiple answers but it didn't state select all that applies? Let me know in the chat box. You haven't? I think most of the time it does say select all that apply. And I typically try to put that. I think I just forgot to put it here on this one when I was messing with it. Now, if I have the cost effectiveness of plant-based diets compared to omnivorous diets, well, if it's cost effective for a plant-based diet, that would be a benefit of a plant-based diet. So I might want some supplemental, I might want some extra information on that because it's going to help my argument. The culture and historical significance of meat consumption. I don't really need a lot of background information on meat consumption if I'm trying to argue for a plant-based diet. So you wouldn't need supplemental evidence for that. Does that help? You're welcome. All right, so we are starting to round out our topics. So the last section, 1.6, this is where you're evaluating a sequence of events. So they're going to give you a series of events and you have to break that down. So how do we go about evaluating these? Well, good thing you ask. So step one, first you need to understand what is the sequence of events. This is where it's referring to the order in which things happen in a story, a historical account, or a certain type of process. So what's the order that things need to happen in or things did happen in? So if it's chronology, what happened first, next, or last? And those are some of the transition words you might see. First, next, last. How one event leads to another. So you have one event and it's a cause and effect. The relative importance of events. Okay? So you got to think, what is the relative importance of these events that are occurring? Now, with step 2, this is where you're going to look for those signal words we talked about, those transition words. So, first, next, then, finally, at the same time. Those are all time indicators showing you that time is lapsing. But dates or times, if it's a specific month, a specific year, a specific whatever, you still want to look for those signal words as well. And then if there are any cause and effect words, they're going to be ones like before, therefore, as a result, due to. Wait, how did I get all the way back there? I tell you. Oh, I think that got copied by mistake. Yep, it looks like my practice got deleted out. But that's okay. Never fear. Just ignore that slide. I think it got deleted or something. I was having some technical difficulties this afternoon, y'all. I almost lost my whole thing of notes. All right. So we are at the end of 1.6. So that's the end of the overview in itself. if you have some time and you can stick around, I do have a handout. Give me 1 second. Un momento, por favor. All right. All right, so in the chat section, you'll see really quickly that I am posting a link. That is for the slides that we've just talked about. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, I just posted it in your comments section as well. Those are for the slides we just did. Now, if you have time to stick around, and I sure hope you do, here is a link to a PDF of some exam type questions. Okay, it looks like this. You should see 2 links in the chat, the comment section. The first one is the slides from everything we've just talked about. The second one is this handout right here. You don't see it. Oh, you know why? Because I'm sitting over here sending it to the wrong people. I had it sending it to myself. Hold on. Hold on. That's a me thing, not a you thing. All right, hold on. Let's try it again. So, YouTube and Facebook, you should be good. But if you're on Zoom, here are the slides. Do you see it now? Okay, awesome. All right, and then here is the worksheet. So the slides, now you've got all my notes from what we've talked about tonight. So you get to take everything that we just saw on the screen, you get to take it home. The second link that I sent, that's the handout, and that looks like this right here. Okay? And I've broken it down by each subsection that we've talking about tonight. Does everybody see that handout? The one that's on the screen. All right, awesome. So once you have that, you can open this one up. So open up that second one, and you will see a practice type handout for you. Now, if you have time, and I hope you do, let's go through these, and I'm going to time you for each section, just so you can kind of see how long it's taking you to read passages and answer a couple questions, okay? So I'm going to set timers, and then we're going to, now you can tell me. I like to do it one section at a time. You do the questions, and then we check it, and then we move on to the next. Or I can put, a whole length of time up there, and you can do the whole shebang, and then we'll go through all of them at one time. What would be the majority rules? What would you like to do? Would you like to just do the whole worksheet by yourself, and then we'll come back and check it all? Or do you want to do it, break it down bit by bit? Either ways, I'm going to time you. I just depend on, it'll just dictate how. So break it down. Break it down. That's the overwhelming. Okay. Everybody's saying break it down. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to read through this first section. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 questions for section 1.1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 questions. I'm going to put 5.5 minutes on the timer because it is a pretty lengthy passage. All right. So 5.5 minutes is going on the timer. Go through, answer those questions, and then after that, we'll come back and check. So 5.5 minutes starting now. All right, we got a minute left. All right, let's go through and take a look. So, hold on. I just lost it. All right, so for number 1, it was B. Adequate sleep contributes to optimal physical and mental health by allowing the body to rest and rejuvenate. Okay. Number 2 was A. And then number 3 was A as well. And then number 4 was C. All right. So how do we feel about those? Any questions? Everybody good? Except for number 1. Okay, so that one can trip up people sometimes. It's because of the way the answers are worded. So if you go back and look at it, it's asking you about what is the main idea of the passage. Well, if we look, sleep is essential, cognitive function, and emotional stability. Well, that was one of the supporting details. B, oh, sorry. B, this one focuses on the entire passage. So adequate sleep contributes to optimal physical and mental health. So if you go back up to the passage, it talks about one of the key roles is cognitive function, okay? Immune system. So emotional stability and mental well-being. So it's talking about all of those things, physical and mental. Whereas if you had selected D, most time if people got it wrong, they put D. So prioritizing sleep is crucial for promoting overall health and well-being. So it sounds very similar to this, despite the challenges. However, prioritizing sleep is the word. But they were talking about just how you need to get adequate sleep, not that you needed to prioritize it over other things. So it was that wording there. Because you'll notice how they're both very similar. They're both talking about optimal physical and mental and overall health and well-being. However, adequate sleep versus prioritizing sleep. Those are two different things. And in the passage, it talks about that you want to get adequate sleep. Adequate sleep, not that you want to prioritize it. See, there's that key word right there. Adequate amount of sleep. See that? So just that small difference in phrasing makes a big difference. Yep. But now you know to be on the lookout for it. All right. So good. But it looks like most everyone, the answers I saw, we were doing pretty good. Does everybody feel good about that section? All right. So now we're going to move on to 1.2. So 1.2, again, we've got a pretty decent passage to look at. And we've got 4 different questions to answer. So I'm gonna put, do y'all think 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes was too long? I'm thinking of going down. What do you think? You guys give me some feedback. Yes, no, maybe so. It was a good time. All right, let's try it with 5 minutes this time and just see how you do with it, okay? If you need a little bit more time at the end, we can always add on some more time, but let's try 5 minutes, okay? Ready, set, and go. All right, looks like a few people are still typing, so just a couple seconds. All right, let's take a look. So for section 1.2, we've got number 1, B as in boy. Number 2, C as in cat. 3 is C as well. And 4 is C. So B, C, C, C. Let me know if there's any questions on those. All right. So since there doesn't seem to be any questions, let's go down to 1.3. So for this one, this is the written directions. There is a passage to read, and then there are three questions on that section. So that being the case, I'm only going to set a timer for 2.5 minutes, and then we're going to come back and check to see if you got through all 3 of them. Okay? All right, ready, set, and go. Thanks for joining. I hope to see you next week. I'm not ending for the others of you. Somebody else was just saying they had to go. All right, let's take a look. So for 1.3, for number 1, you should have gotten B. Number 2 was B. And 3 was C. All right, let me know if you have any questions on any of those. For number 1, why not D? So for number 1, IKEA assembly. That one's too vague. But if we look at it, I mean, it does technically say IKEA assembly, but B was more specific, bookcase assembly. So be careful with that. Because IKEA assembly could be open to anything. It could have been a desk. Yep. Number 3. So what logical step is missing from the instructions? So that one was C, testing the stability of the assembled bookcase. Because if you read back through it, when you get here at the end, it says stabilizing it, use the provided wall anchoring, final touches once it's fully assembled and secured. But it didn't really talk about, I mean, it says stabilizing it, but you never checked to make sure it was actually stabilized. Whereas with, hold on, where'd it go? I went too far. Painting the bookcase, did we talk about that? No. Securing, identify assembling. That one's not necessary, but we went and we put all this effort into securing the back panel. So you attach the back panel to the assembled frame, align it, then you stabilize it, but then you're going to tell me that we don't want to test the stability? Whereas reading the assembly manual, well, you're kind of already doing that. That's implied through the step by step because that's what you're actually reading. Organizing books and items on the shelf, that really doesn't pertain to putting it together. Painting would be the only one that you might should have like wavered on, but painting the bookcase, that one's not as significant as testing the stability as far as putting it together. Does that help? All right. So let's go ahead since we're starting to run out of time. You're welcome. Let's look at 1.4. So this one has two different sets of questions. So the first one's pretty short, but just kind of easing you into it. And then the second one's a little bit longer. And that one's got 3 questions. So I'm going to put 3.5 minutes on my timer for this section. And then we'll come back and check it. Okay? Ready, set, and go. All right, so let's. Oh, y'all have a great night too. I'll see y'all next week. Okay, so let's go through and check this one. So for 1.4, number one was C. Number one in the next section was C. Number two is B. I'm not sure why it didn't highlight there. Number three is C. Looks like you got those right. Any questions on those? The first one, like, as in that one. Oh, it is D. I'm sorry. No, no. Yeah, so it's supposed to be D. I don't know why I put C, but it's supposed to be D. I even put it right here. The passage states to reap the benefits in at least 150 minutes for moderate intensity, therefore 150 minutes. So that one's supposed to be D. I'm so sorry. That was a typo. That's supposed to be D. I put it in the explanation and everything. So number one's D. Yep. All right, so we got to kind of wrap it up. So let's go ahead and move on to 1.5. So I'm actually going to do 1.5 and 1.6 together. So there are 3, 4, 5 questions for 1.5, and for 1.6 there are 4 questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 8 minutes on the timer, and then we're going to come back and check them. Okay? Ready, set. Actually, I'm going to put 7.5 minutes just so you can see if you can work under a real time constraint. So 7.5 minutes. Ready, set, and go. For number 1 and 2, hold on. Down here, what were the answers? C and B. You're welcome. All right, let's come back and check. And someone asked if you could get the answer key. You certainly can. I'm going to post it in just a second once we're finished. All right, so for 1.5, number 1 was D. Number 2 is C. 3 is A. 4 is C. And last, number 5 is D as in dog. For 1.6, number 1 was A. Number 2 was C. Sorry, I was having a minute there. I was like, A's. I was reading that. I was like, why did I put the answer was A's? C, A, C as. Ooh, and that's how you know it's late at night. Number 3, B. And 4 was D. Any questions on any of those? Wonderful. All right, so I just posted the answer key. Anybody got any last questions before we hop off for tonight? That's it. That's all I got for tonight. So I'll stick around for a few more minutes if anyone has any questions about anything. But other than that, that's it for reading part 1. Again, make sure to check out those on-demand videos because they really show you that deep dive into those topics. But if not, I'll have an English one next week, so I hope you join me then. You're so welcome. You guys have been great. You have a great night too. All right, so I'm going to log us out since there don't seem to be any questions. Y'all have a great night. See you next week.